We're going to go over the book of Ecclesiastes, so we're going to start out with hitting a full chapters, but don't get nervous. Most of the rest of them we're just going to hit verses. So, vanity is to waste life without any purpose or goal. Proverbs reveals Solomon's wisdom. Ecclesiastes reveals his foolishness. And we all have a foolish side, I'm sure. Consensus of scholars believe Solomon wrote this book. All the things Solomon tried for fulfillment all failed because under the sun means man without God. All human wisdom fails. It cannot discover the purposes of God. There's a lot of smart people out there, and some have human wisdom, but it fails because none of us are smart enough to figure out God's wisdom. No, he gives it to some who he decides to give it to. So we're going to start here in chapter 1. The word of the teacher, son of David, king in Jerusalem. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And what do people gain from all their labors, at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurries back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. All things are wearisome, more than one can say. The eye never has enough of seeing, nor the ears is it full of hearing. What has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one can look? There is something new. It was here already long ago. It was here before our time. No one remembers the former generations, and even those who yet to come will not be remembered by those who follow them. Wisdom is meaningless. The teacher, was king over Israel and Jerusalem. I applied my mind to study and to explore the wisdom, all that is done under the heavens. What a heavy burden God has laid on mankind. I have seen all the things that are done under the sun. All of them are meaningless, a chasing after the wind. What is crooked cannot be straightened, and what is lacking cannot be counted. I said to myself, look, I have increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ever ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also of madness and folly. But I learned that this also is a chasing after the wind. For with much wisdom comes much sorrow. The more knowledge, the more grief. So you'd say, well, if everything's meaningless, why don't we just give up? That's what you start thinking. But we're going to get to that point, what makes life meaningful. Chapter 2, pleasures are meaningless. I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure to find out what is good. But that also proved to be a meaningless. Laughter, I said, is madness. And what does pleasure accomplish? I tried cheering myself with wine and simply embracing, my mind still guiding me with wisdom. I wanted to see what was good for people to do under the heavens during the last few days of their lives. And we say, well, we all like pleasures. What you think? The people here on the news, they have everything. They're famous. They have everything you and I could ever dream of. And then they're off. Recently, it's happened a couple times. They get busted because they're trying to make more money doing illegal things. So money is nice, and we all need it, but it's not the end all to happiness. I undertook great projects. I built houses for myself and planted vineyards. I made gardens and parks and planted all kinds of fruit trees in them. I made reservoirs and water groves of flourishing trees. He could do big things because he was King Solomon to please himself. He didn't have to do small things. He took on great projects. I bought male and female slaves and had other slaves who were born in my house. I also owned more herds and flocks than anyone in Jerusalem before me. I amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasures of kings and provinces I acquired, male and female singers, and a harem as well, the delight of a man's heart. I became greater by far than anyone in Jerusalem before me. In all this, my wisdom stayed with me. I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for all my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hand had done and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the winds. Nothing was gained under the sun. Wisdom and folly. Then I turned my thoughts to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do than what he had already done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise have eyes in their heads, while the fools walk in darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I said to myself, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. That what then do I gain by being wise? I said to myself. This too is meaningless, for the wise, like the fool, will not be long remembered. The days have already come when both have been forgotten. Like the fool, the wise too must die. Toil is meaningless. So I hated life because of the work that is done under the sun was grievous to me. All it is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Well, we know the king's toil wasn't the kind of toil that the average people did, but he still had a lot of things in his mind he wanted to accomplish. I hated all the things I had toiled for under the sun, because I must leave them to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether that person will be wise or foolish. Yet they will have control over all the fruit of my toil, into which I have poured my effort and skill under the sun. Louis' pastor uses that one, and a lot of other ones do. You never see a U-Haul behind a hearse, so nobody's taking anything with them. People have had their classic vehicles and something that meant to them buried with them, but what's that mean? It means nothing. So my heart began to despair over all the toilsome labor under the sun. For a person may labor with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and then they must leave all they own to another who has not toiled for it. This too is meaningless and a great misfortune. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving in which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain. Even at night, their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. Gail worked for a gentleman when we lived in New Mexico. Very nice man, generous, had a lot of money. And he said to her, "You have one thing I don't have." He said, "You have peace of mind." He's always thinking about his businesses and his money and things that go on. A person can do nothing better than to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their own toil. This too I see is from the hand of God. For without him, who can eat or find enjoyment? To the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. And it says, the key here, to the person who pleases him, God gives wisdom, knowledge, and happiness. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and storing up wealth to hand it over to the one who pleases God. This too is meaningless and a chasing after the wind. Now here's probably one of the most famous chapters, probably the famous one in Ecclesiastes. There's a time for everything and a season for everything, an activity under the sun, a time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, and a time to build, a time to weep, and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them, a time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search, and a time to give up, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, a time to tear, and a time to mend, a time to be silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find entertainment in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing can be taken from it. God does it so that people will fear him. Lets people know he's in control. Whatever is already been and what will be has been before, and God will call the past to account. And I saw something else under the sun. In the place of judgment, wickedness was there. In a place of justice, wickedness was there. I said to myself, God will bring into judgment both the righteous and the wicked, for they will be a time for every activity, a time to judge every deed. So all these silly things or simple things people think they do, God doesn't forget them. And there'll be a time we'll answer for them. I also said to myself, as for humans, God tests them so that they may see that they're like animals. Surely the fate of a human being is like the animals, and the same fate awaits them both. Now we've got to remember this is speaking under the sun, so this isn't what God's saying the final thing is, but this is under the sun, man's perspective. As one dies, so dies other. All have the same breath. And we'll go down. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust and return to dust. Who knows if the human spirit rises upward? Well, we do know by reading the Word of God. And if the spirit of the animal goes down into the earth. So I saw that there is nothing better for a person than to enjoy their work, because that is their lot. For who can bring them to see what will happen after them? People think they know the future, some of them, but they're wrong. So, okay, this chapter 4 will be the last full chapter we read. Chapter 4, oppression, toil, and friendlessness. Again I looked and saw the oppressing that is taking place under the sun. I saw the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. Power was on the side of their oppressors, and they have no comforter. And I declared that the dead who is already dead, who already died, are happier than the living who are still alive. But better than both is the one who has never been born, who has not seen evil that is done under the sun. And I saw that all toil and all achievement spring from one person's envy to another. This too is meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Who here hasn't envied? I'm sure we all have. I know I have. And I remember, this is just a small thing. I was in the cell phone store, and a young man came in, and he told him everything his brother had on his the latest phone. And he said, I want everything my brother has. I want all the toys on my phone my brother has. So we all become envious. Again, I saw something meaningless under the sun. There was a man all alone. He had neither son nor brother. There was no end to his toil. Yet his eyes were not content with his wealth. For whom am I toiling, he asked, and why am I depriving myself of enjoyment? This too is meaningless, a miserable business. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, they can help the other up. But pity anyone who falls and has no one to help them up. Also, if two lie down together, they will keep warm. But now how can one keep warm alone? Though one may be overpowered, two can defend themselves. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly broken. Advancement is meaningless. Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king who no longer knows how to heed a warning. Once we don't think we need any warnings in life, we're in trouble, because we're supposed to walk humbly before our God. And when we start thinking, I'm so big to need a warning, we got problems. I saw that all who lived and walked under the sun followed the youth, the king's successor. There was no end to all the people who were before them, but those who came later were not pleased with the successor. This too is meaningless, the chasing after the wind. Now in chapter 5, we're going to drop down to verse 8. About riches are meaningless. We pretty much determined that already. But if you see the poor oppressed in a district and justice and rights denied, do not be surprised at such things, for one official is eyed by a higher one, and over them both are others higher still. Saying, if people get a position, they think they've arrived, and like the Michael Madigan, the Speaker of the House, he thought he was above everybody, and he found out he wasn't. Now he's in trouble because he supposedly, he hasn't had his full day in court yet, but he's pointing that he did things that were not legal. The increase from the land is taken by all. The king himself profits from the fields. Whoever loves money never has enough. And there was a gentleman on Christian TV one time, he was a millionaire. Well, his attitude had changed, became a believer. And they said, whatever his name was, Bill Joe, how much money was enough back in the day? $1 more. Always had to be $1 more. That was. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with income. This too is meaningless. As goods increase, and what benefit are they to the owners, except to feast their eyes on them? The sleep of a laborer is sweet, whether they eat little or much, but for the rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. I have seen a grievous evil under the sun, wealth hoarded to the harm of its owners, a wealth lost through misfortune, so that when they have children, there is nothing left for them to inherit. Everyone comes naked from the mother's womb, and then everyone comes, so they depart. They take nothing from their toil, and that they can carry in their hands. This too is a grievous evil. As everyone comes, so they depart, and what they do gain, since they toil in the wind, for the wind. All the days they eat in darkness with great frustration, affliction, and anger. This is what I have observed to be good, and that is appropriate for a person to eat and drink and find satisfaction in their toilsome labor under the sun during the few days life as God has given them, for this is their lot. Now here's a key verse to this, 19. Moreover, when God gives someone wealth and possessions and the ability to enjoy them, to accept their lot and be happy in their toil, this is a gift of God. If you get satisfaction from things God gives you. I've seen this, I don't know if you know who Mr. T is. Plays a tough guy. He was a former wrestler from Chicago. It was an award ceremony, and they said all these people were chattering and talking, you know how he talks real gruff, and he says, I know where my blessings come from. So if Annie gets something, and she takes that as a blessing, and I get the same thing and say, well, you know, I deserve that. Or Annie gets the blessing because she takes it as a blessing from the Lord. They seldom reflect on the days of their life because God keeps them occupied with gladness of heart. We're just going to read the first couple verses of chapter 6 and then move on to chapter 7. I have seen another evil under the sun, and it weighs heavily on mankind. God gives some people wealth, possessions, and honor, so they lack nothing their hearts desire. But God does not grant them the ability to enjoy them. So, like we just said, if it's a blessing from God, you'll enjoy it. You might have so many other things that are just, Tony Evans' sermon one time, talking about people. He said, it's just stuff. That's all it is most of the time. It's a bunch of stuff. We have our needs, but half the stuff in our houses we could throw out. Okay, we're going to move on to chapter 7. And we're going to do verses 1, 5, 9, 12, and 20. I'll go. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. Drop down to 5. It is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the song of fools. Verse 9, do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the laps of fools. What would we see here just this past week? 2 people have a difference on the interstate. They pull their cars over. Instead of having a old-fashioned hand-to-hand combat, one man shoots the other. Well, there was people around. They got his license number. Now what's the rest of his life going to be? We're just killing somebody. And I said, some people, I believe nowadays, things you hear don't even have a conscience. They could shoot somebody and go home and sit down and have dinner and have a good night's sleep. Have no conscience at all. No feeling for any human beings. Verse 12, wisdom is a shelter as money is a shelter, but the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. If we have a little wisdom, it can keep us out of tons and tons and tons of trouble. Verse 20, indeed there is no one on earth who is righteous. No one does what is right and never sins. Okay. So we're going to go to chapter 8, verse 17. Then I saw all that God has done. No one can comprehend what goes on under the sun. Despite all their efforts to search it out, no one can discover its meaning. Even if the wise claim they know, they cannot really comprehend it. In chapter 9, we will go to verse 12. Looking for my spot here a minute. Oh, just to read chapter 9. Okay, chapter 9, we're going to do the whole chapter. A common destiny for all. So I reflected on all this and concluded that the righteous and the wise and what they do are in God's hands, but no one knows whether they love or hate awaits them. All share a common destiny. The righteous and the wicked, the good and the bad, the clean and the unclean, those who offer sacrifices and those who do not. And as it is with the good, so with the sinful. As it is with those who take oaths, so it is with those who are afraid to take them. This is the evil in everything that happens under the sun. The same destiny overtakes all. The hearts of people, moreover, are full of evil, and there's madness in their hearts while they live. And afterward they join the dead. Anyone who is among the living has hope. Even a live dog is better than a dead lion. For the living know that they will die, but the dead know nothing. They have no further reward, and even their name is forgotten. Their love, their hate, and their jealousy have long since vanished. Never again will they have a part in anything that happens under the sun. Go eat your food with gladness and drink your wine with a joyful heart. For God has already approved what you do. Always be clothed in white and always anoint your head with oil. Enjoy life with your wife or husband, whom you love all the days of your meaningless life that God has given you under the sun. All your meaningless days, for this is your lot in life and in your toilsome labor under the sun. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. For in the realm of the dead, where you are going, there is neither working nor planning for knowledge and for wisdom. I have seen something else under the sun. The race is not to the swift, or the battle to the strong, nor does food come to the wise, or wealth to the brilliant, or favor to the learned, but time and chance happen to all. Moreover, no one knows when their hour will come. As fish are caught in a cruel net, or birds are taken in a snare, are people trapped by evil times that fall unexpectedly upon them. Wisdom's better than folly, I also saw under the sun this example of wisdom that greatly impressed me. There was once a small city with only a few people in it, and a powerful king came against it, surrounded it, and built large siege works against it. Now there lived in that city a man poor but wise, and he saved the city by his wisdom. But nobody remembered that poor man. So I said, wisdom is better than strength, but the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are no longer heeded. The quiet words of the wise are more to be heeded than the shouts of a ruler of fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Well, the poor man, that kind of proves that it's not always the guy in the highest position or the most well-known or the most well-liked or has wisdom. I'm sure this man had godly wisdom if it saved a whole city. Okay, we move on to, we're skipping over chapter 10. We are going to chapter 11 and doing verses 7 through 10. Light is sweet. Remember your Creator while young. Light is sweet, and it pleases the eyes to see the sun. However many years anyone may live, let them enjoy them all, but let them remember the days of darkness, for there will be many. Everything is to come is meaningless. Remember now, this is under the sun, man speaking without God. You who are young, be happy while you are young, and let your heart give you the joy in the days of your youth. Follow the ways of your heart, and whatever your eyes see. But know that for all these things, God will bring you into judgment. So then banish anxiety from your heart, and cast off the troubles of your body, for youth and vigor are meaningless. It says, remember the Lord when you're young. Well, talk to anybody over, 50. You might have a list in the morning, Dave. Marie used to say that. She might have a list of 6 things she could easily do, and reach a certain age. You get 2 or 3 of them done, you've had a good day. Yeah. Okay, we're going to finish up with chapter 12. Remember your Creator in the days of the youth, before the days of trouble come, and the years approach when you will say, I find no pleasure to them. Before the sunlight and the moon and the stars grow dark, and the clouds return from the rain, when the keepers of the houses tremble and strong men stoop. See that? We have a man on our corner. He's probably maybe a little bit older than me. He's a very active man. He works hard, always working in his yard. I said to Gail this year, did you notice he's starting to stoop? Well, that happens. You live long enough. But when the grinders cease because they are few, and those looking through the windows grow dim, when the doors to the street are closed and the sounds of grindings fade, when people rise up to the sound of birds, but all songs grow faint, hearing's going away, when people are afraid of heights and of dangers in the streets, and the almond tree blossoms and the grasshopper drags itself along, the desire no longer is stirred. Then people go to their eternal home, and mourners go about the streets. Remember him before the silver cord is severed and the golden bowl is broken. That's what it refers to. They used to have lamps with a silver cord, and when they hung down, with a chain, one link breaks, and it's kind of like your body. One link breaks, you might survive. 2 links break, bigger problem. Verse 7, and the dust returns to the ground it came from, and the spirit returns to God who gave it. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Everything is meaningless. Now here's the conclusion. We get to the whole main purpose. The conclusion of the matter. Not only was the teacher wise, but he also imparted knowledge to the people. He pondered and searched out and set in order many proverbs. The teacher searched to find just the right words, and what he wrote was upright and true. The words of the wise are like goads, which I always, for years, thought I knew what a goad was. But it says it's the arm of like a cart. It's about 8 feet long, and it attaches the animal or the beast of burden to pull the cart. Firmly embedded goads given by one shepherd. Be warned, my son, of anything in addition to them. Of making many books there is no end, and much study wearies the body. Now all of you have heard is the conclusion of the matter. Okay, here's the key. Fear God, keep his commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. For God will bring every deed into judgment, including every hidden thing, whether it is good or evil. So in the end, God is, without God, everything is senseless. I mean, we can do all kinds of great things, but if it has no eternal value, what is it? One last verse I wanted to read here, if I can find it. Oh, here we go. I want to read this. It's chapter 3, verse 12. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and to do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is a gift of God, like we said. If we do something, it's like one time I did, you get joy from doing bad things, but it doesn't last. But we lived in New Mexico, and I was just doing odd jobs trying to make some money. So this lady's husband had passed recently, and her yard was all overgrown. And so I spent some time cleaning up her yard, and better than the money, wasn't that much money. The lady told me at the end of the day, I know God sent you here today. And that's better than any sinful pleasures I've ever had in life. Thank you.